This is not your usual Antec case. This is not an advantage compared to the past models that I already stated with past builds that I did, like DP505 or something similar to that. This is Antec's Ax90 case, which has a different interior. Now, so far, what we've seen in two generations of Antec cases, let's put it that way, we had the same interior, different front panels, and then they swapped the interior with something else and improved, and they swapped the front panels again. But still, the last builds that I did in Antec cases were really good because I really enjoyed building inside the new cases that they developed and that they changed the interior. But this case right here has something different, and it has side fans for a side intake or outtake depending on your fan configuration. I place them as an outtake, but you can swap them around and do whatever you want. I didn't see any difference in the thermals yet so far, but that's okay. That's a topic for a different story when we get in touch with the fan configuration in each case or something like that. But that's, as I already stated, for some other topic. Now, right here, what you can do is, this case comes with pre-installed 3 on front and 1 at the back, 120 addressable RGB fans. So you have a controller at the back that supports up to 6 addressable RGB headers. You can control it with a button on top, and you can basically connect it with addressable RGB to your motherboard. So when you press the button on top, you can circle different modes, and you can go to, let's say, a mode that actually picks up the signal from your motherboard, which is outstanding, and you can do whatever you want with it. If you don't have an addressable RGB header on your motherboard, you can just go with the front, well, basically the top button, and switch the color of the fans on front and at the rear as you wish. Or if you do have addressable RGB header on your motherboard, you can just simply plug it in, and that's all there is to it. Now, when we're talking about the case and the design, first of all, the front panel is completely different. You don't have a dust filter on front, but it's some sort of a fine mesh, so it kind of does protect the case from getting dust inside. You have a magnetic dust filter on top, and you have a dust filter at the bottom for your power supply. When we're talking about the bottom part right here, the bottom compartment of the power supply, you have loads of space for the power supply, so you don't have to worry about that. And you have a hard drive cage, one 3.5 or maybe two 3.5 inch, and you can go with one 3.5 and one 2.5 inch SSD. There's also a place at the back to mount two 2.5 inch SSDs, and that's it when we're talking about the storage. Now, the fan support, this case can pack up to 11 fans, so 3 on front, 3 on top, 1 at the rear, 2 on the power supply shroud, and 2 on the side. I would place even 2 on the power supply shroud, but unfortunately with the case you don't get those long screws that you usually get with Antec cases. Now, I'm not quite sure if this was just a mistake while packaging this particular case that I received for review, and I didn't get the 8 longer screws to attach the fans, because I would. In this scenario I would, because I really wanted to see how everything looks with 11 fans inside the case. But regardless to that, it's quite alright. You could manage those long screws anywhere, or if you have some leftovers, that's it. Now, you can place two 120 on the side, intake, outtake, however you decide and however you want to go. I placed them like this just for the show, just to have RGB, but still the thermals weren't that bad. Well, basically they weren't bad at all. The front, 3 120, or I think you could squeeze 3 140, because it does look that it does have enough space. And at the top you can go with 3 120 or 2 140, and at the rear, as always, 1 120. When we're talking about radiator support, you can go with 360, 280 or 240 at the front. The same thing goes at the top. And I don't know if you decide really to go with 120 at the back, but if you go with 240 anywhere else, you don't need a 120 at the back. Actually, when we're talking about the fans and the clearance, the side fans, I placed the Fusion ones, so they're 25mm thick, so you can't go thicker than that, because the GPU gets in the way, and the fans will most likely, well, definitely block your placement of the GPU. So 25mm is maximum, and that's it. The only way you could place a radiator here on the side is if the GPU is quite shorter. So for instance, you have a shorter GPU, I would say up to 275 millimeters. It will be a tight fit, but still it could if you, I don't know, for instance, place a GPU first and then just push in the radiator on the side, 240 of course, and that would be it. That would fit quite nicely. But I would suggest in these terms, this case actually is looking quite solid for a custom loop. And one more thing, if you place the side fans here, you could place a 360 or 240 radiator. 280 doesn't fit at all because the fans cover the side holes for 140 white of radiator or a fan. Well, basically fan you're placing in the front of the chassis, so that doesn't go in a way. So yeah, loads of configuration possible in the AX90, and yeah, quite interesting. Now what I used here is the Antec Ax90 GM. This is a fully modular power supply, 80 plus gold, and it's powering up the Sapphire Radeon RX 7900 XT Pulse, and we have this AMD Ryzen 9 7900X, which is cooled with Antec Vortex 360 addressable RGB. I do have to admit it does look cool. Shame this Neo Echo doesn't have white sticker right here, but that could be also done quite nicely. So the temperatures, the thermals, we have 7900X going up to 88 degrees Celsius, which isn't a terrible thing because the clock speeds go up to even 5300 megahertz, which if you've seen my last video, it explains basically how the AMD Ryzen processors work in those terms. So if the thermals go lower, it pumps up the thermals back up and pushes the clock speed even higher. So that's good, because with yesterday's review we got something similar with the 360 radiator and it did quite nicely. The GPU on the other hand was quite low, and I would say 64 degrees Celsius, both tested in AIDA 64 Extreme Edition with everything ticked. So basically the AX, if you place normal standard fan configuration, because the side ones are just doing an exhaust for no reason, but if you place it like so, and if you manage to grab something like this, you would be quite solid and good to go with these thermals. The build, the case, everything looks nice. I do prefer the past cases, the DP505, the DP503, similar stuff. But this one is quite solid. On the top you have a power on button, reset button, 2 USB 2.0, 1 USB 3.0, 3.5mm jack for your audio and headset because it's a 4-pole, and the LED button to control the LEDs as already stated. So guys, nice to see that Antec is doing loads of stuff in loads of segments when it takes into consideration their cases. You have also loads of holes at the top and at the bottom of the power supply shroud to reroute the cables perfectly, and at the back you do have loads of space and loads of, I would say, those standouts to tie up with zip ties your cables. So perfect cable management is without a doubt here going to happen if you do consider that. But all in all, I'm quite satisfied with the Antec Ax90. It goes in some sort of price range that is affordable with everything that you see and everything that you get inside the case. Only thing missing are those longer screws for the power supply shroud mounting of the fans is definitely missing inside the box. So I would consider that grabbing it somewhere else or anything similar to that just to be able to place those. All in all, that's it. The links for Ax90 from Antec is below. Then we have the Vortex 360 addressable RGB and of course Neo Echo NE850 GM. Everything is in the links below, so do check them out if you're interested in this some sort of a combination. And finally, don't forget to hit that red button that says subscribe. Helps the channel grow. So basically, yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, thanks for staying, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye bye.